70% of the world's population do not have documented ownership rights to the property in which they live. Mobile apps and blockchain can help solve that. I'm Tanya Hall for ZDNet, and joining me is Ali El Husseini. He is the president of DeSoto Incorporated. Welcome, Ali.
Thank you, Tanya. Very nice to be on your show.
Absolutely. What is DeSoto Inc.'s mission?
DeSoto Inc. Has one big mission. It's lifting people out of poverty. And we're doing that via implementing our highly experienced skills on social media, e-commerce skills from Overstock, and blockchain to do so by giving people property rights over the blockchain.
Is DeSoto for-profit or nonprofit?
DeSoto is for-profit, but has a socially conscious mission statement, and what we're doing has a clear and defined mission, as I've said earlier. What we want to do is we're looking to make money out of it, but at the same time, our mission is to establish, to work with, developing countries and, poorer places to get them to claim ownership to the property they already have. I'm not sure if you know this, but about 70% of this world's population do not have ownership or property rights to where they live. Everybody has possession. People are living somewhere. Maybe a shack, maybe a house, maybe a land, even a tent in the sub-Saharan Africa. But they don't have ownership, title. Hence, that's the mission statement. We want to go after, having a universal property rights book for everybody.
Wow, that seems a bit overwhelming. So start out by defining the scope of the challenge.
So the biggest challenge here is, unfortunately, in this world, most people live in the extra legal side of the world, and not everything is done the right way. Not everything is titled properly, and when things are not titled, people cannot benefit from having ownership. As you may know, owning a home or owning a property is one of the major events of your life. It's your biggest asset or capital you'll ever accumulate. And a lot of people work for a lifetime to own a home. In the developing world, it's not as easy as it sounds. In the case of the poorest countries around the world, people have always lived in slums or in poor neighborhoods. They passed along their property. If they are nomads, or they're they're living in metropolitan cities, but they never had an actual title for it. Hence, they were never able to capitalize on that ownership. They've owned it, but they've never actually had the claim to go after and say, "Here, Mr. Banker, please give me a $500 loan or $5,000 loan for me to do all these other things with that capital." And hence, they never. So this is all debt capital in a sense, because this is money that's been sitting and no one has been able to use it or benefit from it. While here in the US and in Europe, we can easily go out and get a mortgage or get a HELOC, or be able to draw on our property to build our business, or even to have a better lifestyle, or even live more comfortably or luxuriously and do home improvements or send our kids to school.
So how are you using blockchain to establish ownership?
You see, what the only difference with blockchain than what we were envisioning prior to this is, with blockchain, it's decentralized. 2, it's very transparent. 3, it's immutable. You can't really go back and change things. Where the biggest problem around the world is corruption. And one of our biggest challenges of not implementing universal property rights around the world is a lot of third world countries, and there's so much corruption that people want to make benefit immensely from the transaction for it to occur. So people decide not to do the transaction. So what we want to do is we want to take advantage of now that we have machine learning on one end, uh, we have blockchain on the other end that can hold all that data, and then we have the technological know-how to go into countries, pick up all that existing information and put it on the blockchain. In a way, we're trying to surface the information. We're not trying to change anything. It's not like it's a discovery of a new system or anything like that. It's just taking the tools that are now available to surface that information and make sure that everybody is aware of it, where prior there was a lot of steps in between for major corporations worldwide that go into a developing country, or it was the case for local people to claim ownership, where it took them years and a lot of money that they don't have to claim ownership.
How do you incorporate mobile apps and social media integration to connect these disconnected ledgers?
So another thing that is very interesting about this world, 70% of the world don't have ownership of their property, but in this world we have about we have 7 billion people, and we have double that amount in cell phones running around this world. So in developing in Africa, for example, I'm going to give you Nigeria as an example. In Nigeria, there's double the population in cell phones and in mobile use. So in the case of Nigeria, mobile penetration is 200%. In that case, everybody has a cell phone, but not everybody has ownership of their property. So by using a cell phone, we want to surface that information. So we're gonna have a mobile app where you would upload your ownership of whatever it may be. In the case of regular government ownership, where you have actually a deed, you'll upload your deed. In the case of local ownership, or you have claims to a certain property, because your tribe says so, or your local community says so, or the local chiefdom says so, or the local terrorist says so. All of us have something to show. We want to upload that and surface that on the mobile phones. The second thing we want to do is, we want to go after, the social media users out there. A lot of around the world, there's a lot of people have social media accounts. Same goes, but they don't have ownership to their home. So in the case of the U.S., every person has a social media account. In certain places in Latin America and Africa, the whole family has one social media account, has one Facebook. It's the family Facebook. So we want to use that technology to reach out to people and be able to get adoption. One of our programs that we're working on, to give you a live example, would be Peru. Peru has 35 million, about 35 million people living in Peru, and 17 million out of which have Facebook. So social media is all over the place. The question is, how do you get to surfacing that information using these tools? Again, the purpose here is to get as much headwind as we can, and then be able to reach as many people as we can using the tools we have today.
Okay. Well, what safeguards do you have in place to prevent local title errors or disputes from being permanently baked into global records?
See, that's a great question. And there's no matter what the safeguards are, there will always be errors and such. But what we want to surface is the information as it is. So we go back to basics. We say the first thing comes first is possession. Okay, if you are living on the land and you possess that parcel of land, that means you have somewhat, either it could be that you are a warlord that took that land, and it's not yours properly, or you may be the person that owns it, or you could be that person that acquired that space, that living space, but you never had rightful ownership to it. So what we want to surface is whatever the case it may be on the ground, and we would validate that information using technology in this case. You asked social media, how would you use it? You know, we can validate when you go on Facebook, people ask you, is this person your friend? In our case, we're going to ask people, is this person living here? Do you know him? And using a geolocator, we can say, well, this person claims this parcel of ownership. Do you, as a member of this community, do you assert that that person is has a rightful claim? Yes or no? So there's many ways of asserting that information, but at the end of the day, no matter what our safeguards are, they're never enough. But what we want to base our work on initially is working on what is existing there. And then we want to surface the disputes. We want to say, you know, this property has, this is a disputed property. Just, you know, FYI, we have, you know, an asterisk or whatever it may be down the road to say, these are the properties that have disputes, these have clean title. Just like you go today and buy a house, you know, your title company goes and say, well, I'm going to give you a title insurance. Here you go. This is a clean title property.
China does not allow citizens to own property, and nomadic societies don't view property ownership as many first world countries do. So, how do you handle multiple property ownership systems in one blockchain?
Well, it's very easy. You know, here comes the blockchain, and you know, the blockchain with technology, it could exercise smart contracts. In this case, it's a smart contract that says after 99 years, that property is no longer owned by that person. So the validity of that place is for 99 years. So let's say that person after 40 years decides to sell that property. It automatically says in the next 50 years, you, whoever person bought that property, have the right to own this place. After this, you can't. Same goes in London. When you go buy a flat in London, you know, a lot of not all of London, but some parts of London, the flats are for 99 years. Some of them are 20 years. Same goes with New York City. We talk about China. We have that example happening right now in New York City. There are a lot of buildings that are leased. The land is leased by New York City itself. And these different HOAs have right for another 20 or 30 years. Hence, you can get a highly discounted apartment right now in New York because it's only valid for 20 years. So what we want to do is we want to use blockchain in this case to say this is a smart contract where, you know, ownership is for that period of time. And with blockchain, you can do that. You can have different ownership on the same blockchain. You don't have to be set in one rule. There's no one rule of doing things. There's multiple rules of doing things. And that's what we are basing our work on.
Ali, how might blockchain disrupt the terrorist business model?
You know, that's my favorite question. I'm Lebanese, so I've lived around the civil war in Lebanon, and I've seen terrorist groups, you know, get close to my hometown, and I had to escape a few times. And I've lived in that environment, so it's something that, you know, is very close to my heart. In the case of terrorism, which people don't realize, the first thing ISIS did when they went into Iraq and Syria, they issued a document saying, this document proves your ownership. If you want to be with us, we'll give you ownership to where you're living. You don't want to be with us, we'll kick you out of the place you're living. And by establishing property rights, they were able to bring in people closer to them. What we want to do is a very simple thing, is say, these are the areas that we're titling. As we're titling regular pieces of land, we're titling areas that are in hostile environments, where people are actually saying, this is owned by us, we're living under X, Y, and Z. In the case of Iraq, you can say that these are the hot zones where, you know, terrorist groups are existing. In the case of Egypt, you know, Egypt had the biggest problem with Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood have, you know, established title ownership of properties around Egypt without even the consent of the government, because the government has all this land that is government-owned land, and some of it is, you know, public land that people built homes on. But the government doesn't give you title. The Muslim Brotherhood gives you title. So if you surface that information is very valuable for the West, where we know what we're targeting. Because a lot of times we target innocent civilians instead of targeting the bad people. And in this case, By getting the right information to the right people, they make the right decisions. And that's how we target terrorists.
Ali El Husseini, good luck with what you're trying to accomplish. I appreciate you sharing some insight with us. If somebody wants to connect with you, maybe they want to find out more about your work or find out how to get involved, how can they do that?
Please reach out, ali@desoto.com or info@desoto.com. We're here. We're looking to partner with as many people as we can, and we're an open book. Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. And thanks again to everyone who's listening. If you want to connect with me, you can. You can find me right here on ZDNet or Tech Republic, or maybe find me on my website, which is tanyahall.net. I've got links to all my social sites, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. In fact, if you want to chat, find me on Twitter at Tanya Hall Radio. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.